that research project visit. And Nik Nerburn went to Karlsruhe Academy of Fine Arts in Germany. And I know there's a group of faculty, and Jenny is leading that discussion of how can we expand and deepen our collaborative relationships for international travel. We also support grads to develop and propose an individually designed research travel, and then there's a review process of the proposals, and two generally are awarded for travel in that way. Just while we're in like logistical mindset, on Tuesday, December 6th, from 12 to 1:30, and we'll kind of remind people of this, there'll be a gathering in this same room to talk about funding, available funding for both research and travel for graduate students. I'm trying to lure some of the MFA students from both music and theater to join us, so it can be more of a cross-arts event as well. There'll be one funder there, emeritus faculty Tom Rose, who set up a travel fellowship that's specifically for supporting graduate students going to Asia. So I'm almost like used up my entire time, so I'm gonna just make the transition. So I'm gonna let each artist introduce themselves through the work itself. And thank you, Namir, for being willing to be the first person. So welcome to the microphone. Make sure to make, a frontal appearance as well.
I'm gonna bring my notebook up here because I need it. Hi, I'm Namir Fearce. I went to Dundee, Scotland this past summer. It was quite the experience. I'm just gonna get into my presentation. It's gonna be pretty conversational. It's the best way that I could have figured to present, kind of like all that I did and experienced while there, so. Okay. That's my ID. I was really fond of my ID. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I still have it. So I went to Dundee. First of all, I found out that I was going to be going to Dundee about a month out from my departure. So there was a lot that had to be figured, and there was already so much that I was doing. One of those things was the High Cotton Ball, which was our experience, an event that I threw in May this year. And it was a super collaborative, multi-textural, multimedia art event. And it took so much labor, so much time. But in part, that helped to fund my travel to Dundee. And about 5 days after closing out such an event, I had to get ready to go to Dundee. So this was the kind of, pressure that cooked off my departure. And yeah, I kind of mark it as like I had went through a storm, and Dundee felt like a lot of quiet for me after, and a lot of just like, it was a huge hop. Okay, so my interest when selecting the Dundee travel, I never thought about going to Dundee before this. I was really interested in the Berlin travel abroad opportunity, but that wasn't available this past year, so I feel like I should still apply, somewhere, something like, who knows? And when I thought about Scotland, I was like, I really was interested in the folklore, the geography, as I'm developing like a folklore and a mythology myself through High Cotton. Although it is like very much lodged in the Black American South, I still thought there were things perhaps for me to learn in this other environment with such a lush folkloric and mythological, history, especially as it is tied to the landscape. Offerings of the land, a specific and removed context to rest, dream, and imagine. Lots of exercise. I purchased a bike out there on Facebook Marketplace. And Dundee is super hilly, so I'm like biking up and down the hills. Like, I learned the city of Dundee very well, in its many hills very well. Access to art facility, and relatively friendly, helpful, and charming people I found in Dundee. In Scotland, it's like, not overly friendly, kind of a little Midwestern too, but, you know, generally cool. You know, it didn't feel like such a cultural shock being in like Minnesota. There were a lot of things about even the landscape that like were familiar to me being from here even. Obstacles, highly bureaucratic, you know, like you think it's bad over here, it's like, okay, yeah, it got, you know, intense, currency exchanges, some disorganized programming, or like I kind of was like, you know, you were kind of on your own and arriving there and facilitating. You know, I learned a lot, you know, this trip. I definitely wasn't handheld through it. And this was also like the holiday season in Europe, so a lot of people were like leaving and like ready to be done with everything. And there was no air conditioning, and it was a heat wave in Europe this summer, so that was interesting. I'm just gonna do like a story through image now. It's gonna be very scrapbook, very fun, not so traditional. So first of all, I went all over Scotland. I didn't stay put in Dundee, but that's just very typical for me. I'm not going to stay put. But I had no choice. My laptop crashed the first day that I was there. My entire hard drive, it would not turn on. And I was just like, what the heck am I supposed to do? I'm a media-based artist. I work in video, I work in programming, and my computer was fried. So I went to a store, an Apple store in Dundee, which they said, we would have to send this off to another facility in Ireland. And I'm like, I'm not letting my computer get sent to Ireland. I don't know what's going on. They're like, your best bet is to go to Edinburgh, 2 hours away. So my second day of being there, I went to Edinburgh to get my laptop fixed, which I had to leave it there in Edinburgh for like 2 weeks, you know. But I met people, I did things, it was cool. And I stopped to see some of these things in Edinburgh, some of these, you know, cathedrals, etc. I don't have the names right now, excuse me. I also went to Glasgow. I met a friend, he's pictured right there on the right, Tulani. He's an artist, he's affiliated with the University of Dundee. And he lived in Glasgow with his friends, and you know, they invited me out. So like I made pretty good friends with people there too. That was really cool to like make these relationships. This is a club named Bonjour in Glasgow. It's the only queer-owned nightlife spot in the city of Glasgow. But such a lush like community of people. It was really nice to meet them. This is my friend Tulani. This is also in Glasgow. This is their studio in Edinburgh, and like this is their view. So I'm just saying, like, you know, I have cool friends with cool studios. I was really impressed by that. And, you know, I made such good friends with people that I was invited to a birthday party. Hey to you, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Yeah, but look at how nice of people and friends they are. Like, it was a huge birthday dinner. I even made something for that. So that was just really cool. Okay, how do I get this to minimize now? Okay. Yes, but this was nice, meeting friends, meeting people. We also went to the Eastern Scottish Shore. So we went to Hospital Field, which was an infirmary in the 1500s. This is like in the fern garden, like used to be greenhouses. The roof is exposed now, but there's like a huge fern there that was shipped all the way from New Zealand and has been there for quite a bit of time, I think since like the 1800s. It was an infirmary, and then it was converted into an art school in like the 1800s. Yeah, there's a lot of other history, but I won't get into all of it right now. I also went to Dundee Castle, which was like a storybook castle. I had never seen anything. This is when I was like, okay, I'm really in Scotland. Like, this is some different kind of stuff. As you can see, I had like my Scottish look on, my Pan-African Scottish look. I was really dedicated to that. You know, I got the hat and everything. But yeah, I convinced Hawona to hike up there with me. Like, we were in there. I mean, this was nothing like I had seen. Like, when you think about a castle, this was a castle, you know. This was a well. Do you see this well? That was a well on top of the castle. So like, they would come up there and they would like never go down. You know, they had everything they needed on top of this, you know, the structure. This was a whole settlement. Here's some other images of me, spiffy images of me at the castle, you know, turning back the gaze, etc. I also did a screening and talk back for my archive, my Wicked Womb archive that I've been developing at the University of Dundee, which I advocated for myself for. I'm really proud about, and there were people that came in all the way from Glasgow because I had advertised it, 2 hours away to come, see the screening and the talk back, and that was awesome. These are just some promotional images and some images of the folks that came out for the screening and talk back. It was really cool. We all went for a beer after, and they like chatted it up with me and talked to me. It was like a really cool feeling. I kind of feel like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm just gonna show you some of the works that, I did. Like I said, my computer crashed, so I was without a machine. But my time was really well spent. Like, I didn't waste any time. As you see, like, I made friends with artists in Glasgow. I made connections with the tramway in Glasgow as well, an arts institution. But this is one of the films that I lost. And it's a few of you who have seen this film in here before I lost it, and I lost it. So I re-edited this film while in Dundee. So I have it. And I also worked on these other edits in the Dundee's media lab. These are just some stills. This is my friend that I also met in Dundee. Really cool lady. We went to the club a lot. I'm just kidding. No, but this is my friend, Hawona. And we traveled together through the residency. And this is just us having a dinner that Hawona walked off on and left me with the bill. It's an inside joke. But no, we had a walk that day. We went to the museum. It was a great day. And I'm so glad to have been there with her. It made it a lot more comforting. These are some photos from a few date nights of mine, of the night sky. This is Scotland. Very beautiful, right? High elevations. This is also my friend that I met in Germany. This is Calvin. Calvin invited me to their friend's family home in Germany because I was having a bit of a hard time. And we were able to meet there. We went to the plum orchard. This is Calvin, their friend, and their nephew. Super cute. And it was super warm. I hope, Calvin, you don't mind. Also, after I left Dundee, I went to Amsterdam, and I kind of did some touring around Europe a bit. Just to be an international superstar, Oh, here's some footage. This is top secret. So I'm just saying, I made a lot of friends. That's all I'm saying. Okay? And here's a little bit more stuff. And then I also went to London. This is Rabs. Their mother is Barbie. Super prolific, Black artist out of London. And they're also a curator, so it was nice to meet them. This is the director of Days magazine. And this is also a really dope illustrator that's from the States that I've been dying to meet, and Sid Falls in the back, who's a genius audio artist. So I just made a lot of really good connections that I probably would not have been able to make outside of these places and being there. And this is some art that I saw. This is a piece from Colleen Smith. It's a larger installation, but I know Colleen used to teach here, so I decided to include it. And this is a sculpture from Chris O'Feely, and I've never seen sculpture from Chris O'Feely, so I was like, whoa, this is what a Chris O'Feely sculpture looks like. But yeah, this is my presentation. This was my summer, and yeah.
And I think really exciting to see how you've leveraged the opportunity
Okay, hi everybody. Hi. I am Nik. I went to Karlsruhe, Germany. Third year MFA here. I went to the Karlsruhe Kunstakademie. Whoops, no, I do not want you to fade. Let me just click this. The Kunstakademie is a sort of beautiful, crumbling, strange old set of buildings in the southern German town. The two photos at the top are from the painting building, and down below is the sculpture building. So students make photos, they make videos, they make performances, all sorts of stuff, but everything is considered painting or sculpture. It's like this very traditional type of way of thinking about what you make. So as you can see, everything's covered in graffiti. There's weird objects everywhere. You're not sure if it's art or garbage. Nothing is locked, ever. Like, doors are wide open, studios are wide open. There's no classes, so there's no class times that you meet. Nothing's really expected of you. Students usually have a couple exhibitions a year that are formal, put on by the school, but they put on exhibitions every week in the space, just totally organized by themselves. I mean, I would rarely encounter professors or technicians who seemed to have control of anything. They were always kind of doing disaster response, and the students were casually building wild projects everywhere. This is Karlsruhe, right here, so you can kind of see. It's sort of where Switzerland and France and Germany meet in the state of Baden-Württemberg. Karlsruhe was built around a palace called Karlsrest. Ruhe means rest, so it was like a resort for this wealthy Baden-Württemberg prince named Karl, who apparently needed to rest a lot. And people joke, like, you know, Ivan the Terrible, people would call him Karl the Exhausted, like, oh, he built the town to rest in, you know? And you can see, so here's the palace, the whole town's built around it. I live in this building here, and you can see, so this green dome, down this street is the Kunstakademie. So every day I would cross these palace grounds to go over to the academy. This was kind of our hangout spot, so there's this pile of weird contraptions and homemade stuff, and you get there in the morning and people are drinking coffee and sort of casually smoking, and they say, oh, hello, good to see you, you know, and you recognize some people and some people you've never seen before. And throughout the day, people come and go and just drink beer after beer after beer, and everyone is making things, and you kind of help out people with certain things, and in the evening, a different crew arrives, and people are there till usually 2 in the morning, and one night we were sitting around drinking, and the security came and said, it's time for everyone to go, and the students just said, well, we are not done. We are still here, as you can see, and the security guard said, okay, that's fine, and he drove away, and the understanding is, like, you're responsible now, so you lock up and enjoy your night. So here's sort of a typical hangout. This was my class. I was in the Bildhauergarten, which is like sculpture garden. It has a little different meaning, I guess. You're put in a class with a professor. So I was in class Jan Bach, that man with the black shirt looking over his shoulder there. That's Jan Bach. He lived in Berlin. He would show up periodically, like kind of unannounced, just to hang out. He's this type of guy who he kind of refused to speak English. Like, he knew some English, but he would just sort of get puzzled whenever anyone spoke in English, and he would say, "Nein, nein, nein," and go back to German. And he didn't say a whole lot to me my time there. He said, "Good art," once in a while. Like, this was his phrase. But he was just like a total prankster, joker type guy. And yeah, that was sort of the daily beer consumption right there. Here are some studios. They're these big sort of double-decker type spaces. In the lower right, that's my little table. They sort of said, oh, you can have this corner and build a table and do whatever you want. So I was mostly scrapping, right? Just playing with scraps that I found laying around. We went to the Venice Biennale. There's me with my Euro stash, and the crew from the Bildhauer Garden. Everyone is like 21, 22, speaks perfect English, has like this comprehensive knowledge of art history. We would walk around Venice, and they would be like, oh yes, this church has 4 giottos in it. They are very interesting, but we will not go because there's no time, you know? Just like really advanced, mature, smart, interesting students. There we are sitting on the water in Venice, and there's a super yacht in the background. Like billionaires come to the Venice Biennale, like from the UAE and London and Russia and stuff. So there are these super yachts there, and Jan Bach would always joke and say, oh yes, my ride is here, like point at them. Here's some work that we saw. The Venice Biennale is a crazy experience. It's sort of like a League of Nations. Like it's this beautiful garden with all these pavilions, which are these old, interesting buildings, and each one is for a different country. And each country will send a representative to represent them at the Biennale. So in the upper left, that's the Danish pavilion. Upper right, I think it was like a Pan-Roma pavilion. The Middle Eastern art was stunning. The lower left art is from Saudi Arabia. The projection is a Lebanese artist. I've always loved Middle Eastern art, but everything I saw there was just floored me. I also love low art too. I spent a lot of time researching cuckoo clocks, or kuckucksuurs, as they are said there. I went into the Black Forest all the time. There was the €9 ticket, so you can buy one train ticket and for €9 and for a month travel as many trains as you want in Germany. So I was in the Schwarzwald all the time, going to like little historic societies, little museums, like, you know, these sort of touristy, schlocky places with the world's largest cuckoo clock and that kind of stuff. But yeah, like really, really rich material culture around there too. Here's me in a cave. There's a student I met who's from the Black Forest, and he invited me to his town to like go on a hike. We spent all day like hiking over these mountains, and you know, went to the Mummelsee Lake where there's a mermaid that lives in it, you know, and there's like carvings of mermaids in the trees and stuff. You know, everyone's so casual about this stuff that I find so interesting. Here's some stuff I made for the diploma exhibition. I made these little Schwarzwaldhausen out of scraps. Made a painting there. It's based on the cigarettes there. These cigarettes packages have these really gruesome paint or pictures on them of people's limbs rotting off and teeth falling out of their heads to get people to quit smoking. Everyone smokes in Germany, like indoors, all over the place. Like I smoked a lot, like I picked it back up. And I was looking at these packages, and students would say, oh, what did you get this time? And it's like a mother blowing smoke into a baby's face. And, you know, they'd say, oh, yes, that is a good one. I made some little sculptures. This little Kuckucksuhr clock thing has this photo inside. I found a bunch of photos, this giant free pile. Germans are very good with their free piles. Like, it's good stuff. It's all very organized. It's very useful. So I found a big stack of family photos, and this is like some place in Switzerland with they built a dam and flooded this town, and the monastery's clock still remains. And the students were like, yeah, this is like a classic vacation spot. Like, this is like where you'd go with your family on a boring vacation. So it's like kind of kitschy to them, and yet to me it's like this kind of epic landscape. Here's another one. We did a little exchange student exhibition where I got to show a bunch of stuff. I was roommates with some students from Ghana. There were students from all over Eastern Europe. A French student I connected with and traveled around a lot with, this guy Luca. Students from all over the place. It was really interesting to like sit and just talk at length about like the kind of normal stuff, like cultural differences between the art worlds where we're from, but like Bulgaria, Ghana, France, America, Germany, like all together. Like it just was really fun to talk to everybody. I took a few trips. This is me on my East Germany expedition. I bought a Scheißerfahrrad, this stupid bike that served me very well. I appreciate that bike. But I took the train to Dresden and then biked all over and went up to Berlin. This is the Elbe River on the eastern side of Germany. Yeah, I was really interested in East Germany. Like, what's up with East Germany? What's the whole history? What's the story? The photo on the lower right is in Kassel when I went to go see Documenta. I stayed at the, what do they call it? The Brothers Grimm Hotel. And I always thought it was funny because their stories are all from the Black Forest and this wallpaper is like jungle, you know? Documenta was just amazing. It's another gigantic art festival. Really, really amazing work because they will mix contemporary, it's spread out all over town. And they will have it at different venues, and these are traditional German material culture museums. So history of this one German state. There's a museum that's like the history of death, like death in Germany and how it's celebrated. So kind of standard, like non-art museums. And they would take half of that space and put this contemporary work in it. So you got to see sort of this traditional stuff mixed with the contemporary and like these threads between them. Really, really amazing. We had a final exhibition where we built a bar. And yeah, they have this gigantic party at the end of each year. Just this like booming, thunderous rave. Like everyone shows their art. Like it goes for many, many days. People sleep there. We had a little Fußbad. You see that bucket with the lemons in it? Like you sit there and put your feet in the lemon water and you know, have a beer and enjoy the work. We built this bar out of trash. I made a bunch of crap that I nailed to the front of it. Making a bunch of these wooden animals. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, just to wrap it up, it was an amazing experience for the art and for the culture and stuff, but like I made so many good friends with people, and I feel like that's what's different about this type of thing is like you can go to Europe and see the Biennale and see Documenta, but to be in this art school context, like to meet people and hang out with them and get to know them and have these days where you wake up with no plan, like in a foreign country, like it's so rare, like normally everything is so budgeted time-wise, to just wander and hang out with people and get to know their lives and help them with projects and have these spontaneous encounters, like it was a really amazing thing. Auf Wiedersehen.
So next we'll welcome Hawona, and because people are so amazing, I think there are actually going to be some minutes before 1 o'clock for questions.
Hello, and thank you for coming. Yeah.
It's gonna fade between them?
What's going to fade?
It's like it's going slideshow.
Oh, in slideshow mode? So then I shouldn't do slideshow mode then.
Close it and press the green button in the upper corner. That works for me.
Press the green button in the upper right corner?
Yes.
Upper left, right corner? Upper left, right? Okay, all right. Hello, and thank you for coming. So my presentation is called Hawona in Dundee, or A Not Quite Scottish Girl Comes Home. And the reason for that is because I have been on a DNA journey since I've been here at the university, and discovered that I had this small, I think it was like 3 or 4% like Scottish ancestry. And so when it was possible to go to Scotland, I applied immediately saying, this is the only opportunity I'll likely get as a grad student to inhabit a landscape where I have ancestry from. And I was really excited about the chance to go to Scotland and have this time in the landscape. So this is some random building. I think it's the engineering building at University of Dundee. And so I wanted to start with that because it's a very traditional building. But I also want you to look up at the top and see the sky. And the first thing I remember when I got off of the plane in Scotland was looking up at the sky and realizing it was not the same sky as the sky in Louisiana or Minnesota or Tanzania or France or any place else that I'd ever been. It was a shocking blue, a really shocking blue. This is the window and the studio that Namir and I shared. I'm going to pause there. If you look to the left in the first photo, you'll see there's actually a sink, which is like unprecedented. They gave us the best studio, and we also had water. This is the table that I got that we found out all of the other students actually provide all of their own furnishings, similar to the MFA students do here. And so they lent us furniture that they use in some of the multi-space. So we got a chair and a desk. One of the other interesting things about the landscape there is that tropical plants can grow in Dundee, and it just blew my mind. So there on the table, the landscape architecture people came through and were trimming back all of the plants on campus, and they were tossing these in the bin to take them to compost them. And I asked if I could have one, just so I'd have some green in the studio that I shared. And I fished that Scottish rye bottle out of the recycling bin and put my plant in that. Almost everything that I used when I was there came from a space that the department has where people are encouraged to leave and take any art materials that they don't want or that they need. And so all of my organizing, the collage materials that I used, the colored papers, pencils, charcoal, everything was just in that room. And so when I finished, I just put everything back at the end of my time there. One of the things that I found was this netting material. And since I had been so fascinated by the blue of the sky, it was the first thing I picked up and took back to the studio and began to work with. And so if you look, I'm sewing it using fishing line to create like the biggest ball I could make out of all the netting. And then here you see I've installed it in Namir's space, because he wasn't there that day, and took some photos and began just this sort of deep kind of study of blue kind of in the space. And I want to, if you look through the window there, you'll see that there's a light, like kind of structure. And without my glasses, that always looked like a bird that was flying by. And so then you'll see what happens next. I took this ball everywhere with me for 7 days. Everywhere. It was ridiculous. And then I would take photos of it. Sometimes I would sit it in the chair across the table from me, and people would look at me and be perplexed. I would take it shopping with me in the shopping cart. I would take photos of it everywhere. It was sort of like my blue Scottish baby. Then I graduated. I found a blue rope, and I thought, well, this is going to be a lot easier to manage than the ball. So I started to wear this rope around my neck and make it in all these different formations. And very quickly I realized this is not the same thing as the ball. In the space there were probably about 10 or 15 different pieces of rope, and I was really curious about making something with them, but I felt really conflicted because of what ropes have meant in African American culture, and I just thought I can't just do some sort of Eva Hess type installation with ropes or Sheila Pepe. I couldn't do that, and so I just decided I would wear them around my neck and try to make them look as fashionable as possible so that only I would know that I was grappling with what it meant to be of both these cultures and to be struggling with the yokes, the ropes of identity in this place. There I am with my lovely orange ropes around my neck, looking very fashionable on that day. There I am with the rope that my studio mates did not want me to wear when we went out to have a drink, because they said, well, this rope isn't the same as the other ropes that you've been wearing. So it's the only one that didn't get to go to dinner, but I walked around campus with it on all day. Photo by Namir Fearce. Another thing about the landscape was that I discovered these grates, which of course are all over the world, and they would remind me of things that I had at home, in particular that had West African connections. And so I found this grate on campus, and to the right of this is a piece of kuba cloth from the Congo, and it was unmistakable for me that there was a connection between the design aesthetic in this and the design aesthetic in these Congolese pieces. And then some stuff went down with some seagulls. So one day I was walking to my studio and I heard a woman screaming for help. And I thought, well, should I run and get someone or should I go back? And then she screamed again, help, help. And so I turned around and went back. And I didn't see anyone. The entire courtyard was empty. And so I was like, okay, y'all playing games. Then I started walking again, and then I heard her scream again. And then I thought, oh no, she's been, snatched and taken somewhere. So I went back and I started looking all around, and again, I didn't see anyone. And then I heard help, help again, and realized it was coming from up on the roof of one of the buildings, and it was a seagull. And I thought, well, that's new. I have heard seagulls make sounds that sound sort of human. I've never heard a seagull speak English. So I said, well, no one's going to believe this story, so I need to record this. So I pull out very discreetly my cell phone to try to get a recording, and Seagull was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. So I sat there for almost 45 minutes, and the seagulls made every sound but help, help, and eventually I realized it wasn't going to happen. The rest of the trip, I would put my little digital recorder in the window all day while I was gone in the hopes that at some point I would hear something similar to that. The first half of the trip, it turns out I wasn't working the recorder correctly. The second half of the trip, all I got was a lot of trucks backing up, a few seagulls squawking over periodic things, and lots of drunk college students talking about who had the best specials. Some other birds. I just started taking pictures of birds. Magpies. So I've been called a magpie by my grandpa since I was a little girl, and I didn't really know what that meant. And then I saw these beautiful black and white birds, and finally asked someone, and they said, that's a magpie. And it was the most startling reaction that my body had. There's this beautiful black and white thing, and it's what my grandfather used to call me. And so I started taking pictures of them. And it turns out they can be a little aggressive, just like the seagulls, if they're not feeling what you're doing. Then I was walking, and I saw what was so obviously, to me, a bird in one of the grates. And the symbols and shapes on there echoed one of the kuba cloths that I had, and I was like, wait a minute, something's happening here. So I started doing rubbings of all of these grates, thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start doing these rubbings, and I'm going to make these things, and it's going to be amazing. Here you see me taking a photograph of some seagulls that are flying outside of the Victoria and Albert Museum in Dundee, because I could see a parallel between that grate and the images around me. And then a trip to Edinburgh, to the National Galleries, where I was really struggling with what this trip was going to be about for me. And then I stumbled onto this installation piece, Everything is Going to Be All Right, and this brilliant blue sky. And I let go of any anxiety I had and just decided to be. When I arrived back home, I was lamenting that I have a blue ball, which I brought on the airplane with me, about 2,000 photographs of birds, some travel photos, and no idea what the hell I'm supposed to do with all of this. And then I had a studio visit with Yi Ilan, a visiting artist, who took old archival photographs from colonial documentation by the Dutch in the Dutch West Indies and in Malaysia, and made these stunning digital collages. And it made me think, maybe I should try that. Maybe that can help me with some of this ambivalence that I have. And so I started going through the travel photos and the bird photos that I had taken, and then going through historic photos from my family's photo album and matching the birds with the people and creating these digital collages. So here are 3 of my cousins in what I think is probably the early 1960s, and 3 magpies from the sky in the landscape in Wales, where I also went. I went to Wales, I went to Ireland, I went to England. These are my boy cousins, and this is a particularly feisty magpie that was coming right at me, and rather than be afraid, I just put my camera up, closed my eyes, and just pressed the button. This is Holy Island in Wales. This is my papa, wearing a hat I got him that says "World's Best Dad," and I have placed him in a mountainous, like hilly landscape with some seagulls. And actually, everything in this photo is real, except for my father. He's been added into the photo. So the seagull was flying in exactly the same formation as the sewer grate that had the bird form on there, and I took that picture there. And so I'm continuing this work with the birds and making these collages and continuing processing all of these images from Europe and continuing to try to figure out what it means to have this complicated ancestry, some of which is known how I got it and some of which I don't know how I got it, but it's quite the journey. So I'm really thankful for the University of Dundee's space, for the opportunity to inhabit this landscape, to see some really amazing work, and to be in a perfect jumping off point to do some more travel around the UK and Ireland. Thank you. My flatmates.
Thank you to everyone. If the illustrious speakers would like to sit up and face anyone with some questions. So in any genre of question about your experiences of your how long did you stay there?
2.5 months.
I was in Scotland for 5 weeks, and then traveling around for another 6 weeks.
Thanks.
Oh, I was in Dundee for about like a month and a week, and then I did about 2.5 weeks of travel after. Yep.
2.5 months. 2.5 months.
Other questions?
There are no dumb questions. We should repeat that question, right? So the question was, when they found out we were American, did they treat us differently?
I just feel like everybody knew, like, I didn't have to, like, open my mouth. I was just walking down the streets in my cowboy boots and, my Glenderry, and they're just like, I don't think there was really a question. As if I was American, I was so American.
Right.
But it was just like, okay, well.
So American that other Americans would say, American, right? Be like, yeah.
More
Right.
specifically,
Yeah.
North American.
Right, yeah. And the first friend that I made when I was there was a Canadian woman who's a PhD candidate. And she said because of the length of her program, that she often felt like she was the cultural ambassador for Canadians and Americans who would come, to tell us to speak more slowly, but also to just enjoy and maybe leave a little bit of that American anxiety for I'm here for 5 weeks and I need to accomplish all these great things in 5 weeks sort of behind. I will also say, though, that I had a couple of not so good experiences about being American. I had an acquaintance who came through Dundee on his way someplace else. He was also American, and we were at a restaurant, and we were both American, and the server gave us our change back, and when I got home, I realized they had given me some Northern Irish currency. And when I mentioned this to another one of the international students, she mentioned that the same thing had happened to her. And she said, I'm not sure if they don't want us here or if they just thought they could get away with it. You can take it to the bank and you can exchange it, but it's just sort of like a burden. So it's also a really important reminder because, as quiet as I was inhabiting that landscape and really just enjoying the time there, I also understand that for someone else, there may be tensions that they are overrun with tourists in the summertime, and they just assumed that we were just more of the same.
No, they didn't treat me different. People thought I was from Denmark most of the time. And one German student said that all Americans speak in catchphrases and quotes from shows. She said they're so boring to talk to, and you're not that boring.
How about any questions for people who are imagining that they too will
How would you attract
My situation is specific because everyone thinks in Germany everyone speaks English, and this is not true. In Berlin, a lot of people speak English, but in Karlsruhe, it was pretty challenging to try to not speak German or to not have any German training. I would have done a semester of German, absolutely. Even to Berlin, you'll get a lot more out of the experience. I was pretty handicapped,
Well, there's a lot. This was a learning trip, to go under these contexts and to have to figure a lot out. I have a lot of knowledge now, but that's from experience. I would definitely have had more time before knowing I had to leave, but just that was circumstantial, in terms of figuring it out with department and everything. And I think, we will have more time in the future, but I think just having more time to kind of figure out assets, but that came together very kind of luckily for me. But I would say also just knowing the time of year that I'm going, how that affects, really deeply understanding how that affects travel. But I do know that now, so I would make different decisions, getting some of that travel out of Dundee between these different European countries, no, that's not quite something that I can just figure out on the land, or that's something I have to really figure out, and work around the fact that everything is in influx during this time, those kind of things. But you kind of only figure that out either through someone who knows a place, or you have to figure that out on your own, and I did. So I don't regret too much.
Well, we were the first people to go on these programs after the pandemic, right? And the pandemic wasn't over. And so I think things that I realize now that I should have thought about was I should have taken COVID testing kits with me. I had taken 2, and I was following the protocol after I get there of testing, and so I used those all up. And so when thinking they would be easy to find, when I got the next exposure, I didn't have any, and no place on campus had any, and I didn't know how to get them, and I didn't know that I couldn't purchase things online with my American credit card because you need a billing address in the UK. And so I ran into problems over and over again. I couldn't order takeout because you need to have a billing address there. And so what I found out later was that as part of the process of being a visiting student at the university, you will get your ID card and a letter that says that you're there. And it's a really good idea to take that letter and ID card, bring some cash, go and start a local bank account. Even if you're only there for a month, because then it allows you to order stuff online and have it delivered directly to you there. It allows you to get Chinese food when you don't feel like going out, because that Chinese place was amazing, but it wasn't as amazing when you had to walk there and walk back to sort of get the food. And
That's where my bike came in.
right, exactly. And groceries, to have groceries delivered and things like that. I think I also wished I had understood that I wasn't going to be able to spend time with the MFA students and their program because of the way the school year is structured. Their MFA program is 12 months long, and the summer is the time that they are preparing for their thesis exhibition, and they are frantic and they are busy. And while, you know, every once in a while people would sort of like hang out, it wasn't as if it was the middle of the school term and we had lots of time together. And so had I realized that I was going to be on my own a lot more, I might have actually planned more deliberate trips to certain places. The really amazing thing was that we were there at the same time as a large group of students who were participating in an exchange with the university. And so the director, Mary, actually paid for and planned several trips that we would not have been able to do, and they were completely free for us. We got to go to Edinburgh to see these galleries there. As Namir mentioned, we got to go to Hospital Field, we got to go to these fishing places. It was amazing. And I would have had to pay for all of that on my own if we hadn't had that. So, yeah.
So, thank you. That brings us to time. And just to, I think it's evident, but I think it's always good to reflect upon how these opportunities come to be. So, for instance, Mary and Chris have been colleagues and friends for a long period of time, and that's what makes a sustaining relationship. So there's all this human generosity that goes into creating these opportunities for people. Just a reminder, thank you. Sorry, Karen. Just a reminder, December 6th, I think that's the date, Tuesday, 12 to 1:30. There'll be 12 to 1. We'll have a funder presenting about a travel opportunity that's separate than those within the department, as well as other travel opportunities, a research funding possibility as well. And we're going to leave the last half hour just for socializing. So that'll be a great event too. Just another deep appreciation to each of you. I really am amazed at the humor that you brought to your presentations and to your attitude to life. So thank you so much.
Thanks to the department.